Mansfield today, and it's a Sunday where we kick back our feet and just have a little bit of fun after what's usually a hard week and prep ourselves for another week ahead. Don't forget, tomorrow we'll be joined by Chris Gibbons in the finance section of Mansfield today. But today we do the fun stuff. And part of the fun stuff, of course, is getting into the garden. She's always causing chaos on this show and probably will again. Melanie has been going on and on and on about damn bulbs. What? Yeah. Let's get this out of your system, girl. What is it with you and bulbs?
We're talking obviously about flower bulbs and not about light bulbs, because those are very boring unless you're very into electricity and stuff like that. This time of year, when we're looking at May, June, is a really exciting time for gardeners across South Africa because, well, what can we say? We take them, it's like a little treasure hunt, okay? We get these little things and pop them in the ground, and no, they're not going to do anything right now. We have to wait for them to actually come to about springtime before we can actually see the fruits of our labors in the garden. But it is a time where we just go completely nuts. I don't know why, Jeremy. It is one of those things that happens, okay? And it's when the temperatures get lower, everything's going to be gray and gloomy and not very green or pretty in the garden. But we're waiting for the warmer weather. It is a harbinger of not doom, but better times to come, because as soon as we see those little leaflets sticking out of the ground, we know spring is on its way, and so is warmer weather and a better time for all. Now, when it comes to bulbs, of course, people can get very confusing, and that's why we're here to demystify things about gardening. Gardening really isn't difficult, except when you're doing the actual manual labor, which I don't do. I believe totally in chaos theory gardening. I go out into my garden, and if it doesn't grow, it gets chucked, and I don't want to have to do any maintenance. I seriously do believe that that's why it doesn't get watered. If it can't deal without water, then it doesn't belong in my garden. And that's the way we should all be looking at things. So what do you want to know about bulbs specifically? I've got a whole lot of information for you.
Mel, I know nothing about bulbs. Absolutely nothing. So you could spin the biggest yarn you ever wanted to, and I'd go, oh, that's amazing.
Well, okay, I'm going to give you a thing to be surprised about. Did you know that a banana is actually a bulb?
No.
It comes from a bulb. It comes from a bulb. It's also the biggest herb going, okay?
What?
It's the biggest herbaceous plant, and it is actually under the herb family as well as being in the bulb family. And the banana is not a fruit. Well, it is a fruit, but it's also not a fruit. So that's just how things can get confusing. And then, of course, you have taxonomists who come along and they go and change all the names and put them into different families. And you sit there and think, well, I know nothing. Most of the time I know nothing, but then we can blame it on this. Okay, that's the way it goes. But when it comes to bulbs, it's a huge family. I mean, if you had to go through what plants come from bulbs and what bulbs are actually, now, it's easy to work it out. This is a bulb. Okay, we all know these. We have them in our kitchens.
No, it's an onion.
It's an onion, which is a true bulb. Okay, as is this. What is this, Jeremy?
It's garlic.
Garlic. It's also a true bulb. Okay, so your onions, your garlic, and tulips are true bulbs. And in fact, when it comes to tulips, did you know that people used to eat them instead of onions because they couldn't get onions? So a tulip bulb is actually edible. Although back in the 1600s, I would have said to people, don't eat that because those things are going to become very, very pricey. And in fact, in the 1600s, some people sold their houses to people for a handful of tulip bulbs. It was completely madness. Supply and demand, what can we say? And it's not much change. I think people get quite a fright when they find out how much bulbs can cost. But I mean, you have to think about what production goes into it. Now, we're talking about a true bulb, and this is one of my absolute favorites, okay? It's not indigenous, from Uruguay and Argentina. It's called the Iphion, which is a blue star flower. And you can see these little bulbs are tiny. They're really, really small little things, okay? That's why you get 200 of them in a pack. And the plant only gets to about this big when it grows, and it gets these beautiful kind of bluish, lilac-y colored star flowers, and they just hang out all the way through. I put a river of them through my garden, which is a really wonderful thing to do. You plant in the grass where you throw them up in the air and they land, you plant them there, so you don't have this horrible sort of regimented way of looking at stuff. So those are true bulbs. Then you come to other things which are called corms. And this is one of our lovely South African indigenous flowers called the sparaxis, or the harlequin flower. It comes from the Cape Floristic region. A lot of our wonderful bulbs do come from that area, as I'm sure we're all very proud of them, the gladiolus and all of those type of things. And those are what corms are, these little things like this. They're not actually bulbs, but they're still under the family of bulbs. Now, going back into the kitchen, this is also classified as another bulb, which is a
Potato.
a potato. Yes, it's actually a tuber, and it differs to the sweet potato, which has just come out of my garden, by this actually being a swollen, a root type thing, and this is more a swollen stem. Go figure, okay? It's actually different parts of the plant. They are not roots. They are actually bulbs. Okay, so we've got those. And then, of course, here's another one, which is a rhizome plant. And this is, what else would you eat with this? You're the chef around here.
Ginger. Yeah.
Ginger. This is also a bulb. Now, who knew? Turmeric is also classified as a bulb. And those are all the things that you need to know. Now, when it comes to your corn plants, I'm sure you all know, this is a possum picker.
What the hell is that?
It's a gladiolus, and you won't find them growing in South Africa in the gardens at the moment because it's a summer bulb. So most of the ones that we are selling and seeing, should we say, out in the shops at the moment are all winter bulbs, okay? And June, traditionally the time to plant your tulips here in South Africa. These you have to wait until it becomes summer, all right? But it's called a possum picker, thanks to Dame Edna Everidge from Australia, Barry Humphries. She used to walk around. Do you remember? I pick you, possum, because she used to call everybody possum. So she used the glads as a possum picker. All right, so the reason why we have to know what bulbs are, so we have people coming in and saying, I want to plant amaryllis at the moment. We're like, no, you can't. Sorry, that's not going to happen. And they're like, why? Because like with gardening, everything happens in seasons. So you have to take the right season into account. And when it comes to planting them, well, quite frankly, as long as you get your soil looking really good, okay, add some compost into it, let it settle down. You take your bulbs, and everybody says, can I plant my bulbs too deep? No. What you do is you look at the bulb, and they'll take a bigger bulb. Let's just say that this is the size of your daffodil bulb or tulip bulb. You take it, and whatever size the bulb is, you plant it that far under the ground or in your pot under the ground.
The same size as the... The
same size.
Okay.
That's how deep you're going to put it. Okay, so that's easy. They say, do I need to plant it with the pointy side down? Does it matter which way around I plant it? Actually, no. Bulbs are really clever things. They will send their roots down and anchor themselves, and then they'll grow up around it. So it's not really a big deal. The biggest deal is making sure you feed them well when you plant them, and then you've got to water. And this is where most people don't have success. They either overwater or they underwater. And the rule of thumb, 4 Fs, okay, which is you've got to water them for 40 minutes, 4 times a week, and don't forget. There's another F.
There's another F.
Feeding. That has nothing to do with watering. I forgot. No, and feeding them, you keep feeding them, and so, because what the bulb needs to do is take the food so that it can actually suck in all the nutrients and create the flowers, and that's what they do. And the more important time to feed them is once they have flowered, so that they can get themselves going for the next season. I mean, it really isn't brain surgery, okay? People just seem to think that it is, and if I can do it, trust me, anybody can.
Well, thank you very much for the cookery show that we had there today from Mel. Lovely to talk to you again, and we'll chat to you again next Sunday.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Have a lovely day further.
Cheers. Bye-bye, Melanie. Melanie Walker, the Gardening Fundi.